If you watch Love is Blind, we're going to get into 10 lessons about dating and relationships we learned from season 8. Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia, and normally I share no nonsense advice for navigating dating and relationships with confidence and ease. But today, we are going to get into season 8 of Love is Blind. I did the recaps of the first 9 episodes. Then I went on vacation. I caught the finale last night, and I want to get into the lessons we learned. And yes, I watched all of the episodes on normal speed. This was a tough season to watch. It was very slow, but there were some things we can learn, and I want to get into them. Also, by the way, spoilers ahead. This is your spoiler warning. If you have not watched this season 8 of Love is Blind, go watch episodes first unless you don't mind being spoiled. All right, so today we have 10 lessons. These lessons, by the way, that I'm pulling from the last few episodes plus the reunion of season 8 of Love is Blind. So they're in no particular order of importance. They're just things that I noticed while I was watching them and taking notes and kind of analyzing things from the perspective of someone who has a dating podcast, from someone who has worked with daters and helps people get into relationships. So the first one is you're not going to find someone who aligns 100% with your views and values, but having a decent amount of overlap on the big stuff is really important. So this season, we saw 2 relationships end due to a mismatch in values. We had Sarah and Ben and Virginia and Devin, who these couples both made it to the altar and they both said no. Both women said no, specifically in this situation. This came up a few times. Devin had a line where he said that it's okay to have different views. He mentioned this on the reunion. Sarah also had a line. She said, I assume to meet a guy who aligns with every aspect, but that's not life. And look, there is some truth to this. If you're dating, you're not going to find someone who aligns 100%. That doesn't exist. But I think that having the overlap on the big stuff is crucial because it affects just how you make choices in your lifestyle together. It'll affect how you raise a family if you choose to have kids. It affects so many decisions you have to make as a couple, and it's going to be so much easier to make those decisions if you align on the basics. Also, I think there's just a level of respect sometimes that's missing if you don't align on certain things. Virginia lacked respect for Devin because he just didn't have a lot of depth or thought when it comes to certain issues and causes and things that she really cares about, like women's rights and LGBTQ rights and all these other things that she was bringing up actively when she was talking about politics and religion and all these other things. Devin just kind of shut down. He kind of didn't want to talk about it. Apparently, he shared views off camera that he didn't want to share on camera, which is like huge red flag. And these 2 relationships, like Ben and Sarah and Virginia and Devin, kind of show not enough overlap. It just wasn't going to work ever because they didn't have enough in common. Having a connection doesn't make up for this either. Like having a strong connection or physical chemistry won't make up for a lack of alignment in core values. So what we can learn from this is like when you're dating, you want to aim, I like the 80-20 rule, right? You want to aim for 80%. That's good enough. You're not going to align on everything, but it's also okay to reject someone like we saw on the show if you don't align on things that are really important to you. All right, the second takeaway from the season is we can clearly see the difference between what women bring to the table versus what men bring to the table in dating relationships. And look, I like to point out often on my podcast and on my channel that there are a lot of great guys out there, and I do believe that. But this season of Love is Blind highlighted the massive gap between some of the women and some of the men when it comes to emotional intelligence, self-awareness, compassion for others, and communication skills. Some of the basics. And I was happy to see the women putting their needs first and walking away from men who just weren't on their level. And again, I'm talking about the Bens, the Devids, the Daves of the world, the Alexes and Masons of the world, the Joeys of the world. Like, oof, these guys, it just seemed like they were a mess. I mean, they didn't really know what they wanted. They weren't able to clearly communicate. They were so focused on trying not to be the bad guy in camera to the point where that kind of backfired. They weren't able to communicate in a direct way, and we can see how frustrated the women were trying to pull things out, trying to make sense of their actions, trying to figure it out. And on the guy side, we just got a lot of gaslighting, a lot of confusion, just vague answers. I mean, I get it. Like with the cameras, it's probably different than how they would be in real life, which is unfortunate. But it was just disappointing to see. And it did reflect a lot of what I hear from women about men in today's dating world that and just really did highlight the real life frustrations that women are facing in dating right now. And I think, to the guys on this season, if I was speaking to them specifically, I would encourage them to work on getting the basics of emotions down, like being able to identify the emotions they're feeling and then just being able to communicate them out loud in a very basic way. It takes practice. It really does. It's a skill that I think some men are lacking, and it can make communication really difficult. And everyone knows communication's key in relationships. When we lack this skill, what it translates into is what we saw in the season, which is like people shutting down, people being closed off, people throwing blame, people not being able to take accountability for things. We also saw some lying, gaslighting, manipulation. I mean, it's really frustrating. Another thing I would want men and people in general to work on if you're looking to be in a relationship, if you say you're really ready for marriage, is accountability. You need to acknowledge your part in the dynamics you create in your relationship. It takes two. You are part of the mix. So you've got to acknowledge your part, your contribution to the dynamic, and own what you've done to cause the outcome. Right. And I'm really thinking about Dave here because it's not that he had zero accountability. He did acknowledge in the reunion his part in the dynamic between him and Lauren and how he couldn't get over that she hooked up with someone within a week of going on the show. But like in the conversations they were having before the reunion, before they broke up, it was just so clear that he was just not able to take accountability. And it was so frustrating. All right, the third lesson is that pressure cooker romance rarely works. And I think we all know this. I mean, shows like Love is Blind put people in a position where they need to get to know each other and to make decisions quickly, which doesn't reflect real life at all. Love can be blind, sure. I think we can say you can fall in love with someone through a wall. I really do think that the connections and feelings they have are real some of the time. But relationships and commitment need more than 6 weeks to fully develop. This season, only one couple got married, and that's Taylor and Daniel, and they were so cute. They really grew on me by the end, even though their entire relationship revolves around Christmas. Only one couple got married from this experiment this season. And I think in real life, the slow burn is the way to go. 6 weeks in, you're hopefully still just trying to feel each other out to see if you want to be in a relationship, not walking down the aisle. All right, the fourth lesson is if you're heading towards marriage with someone who's hiding you from their friends and family, that is your sign to run. So, unless the person you're with has cut themselves off from their family for their own mental health or safety, if someone has agreed to marry you or, they're seriously dating you, you've been in a relationship for years and they won't introduce you to their family, that is a deal breaker. And again, I'm assuming they're on decent enough terms with their family, right? I think there are legitimate reasons why someone would not talk to their family. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who do interact with their family and are not introducing their fiance. Like what? What was going to happen at the wedding? I don't think your wedding should be the first time you meet someone's family. And I'm talking about like kind of the American culture of dating. Maybe in other cultures, that is the norm, but in American culture, no. And Dave kept being like, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. Sometimes it is that simple though, right? Sometimes it is that simple that if they're hiding you from their family, something's up, something's off, that is your sign to run and end it. Dave at one point literally said to Lauren, like in their breakup conversation, if I wanted to introduce you, I would. And it's just like, Dave, do you not hear the bullshit coming out of your mouth? Like, did you not just hear yourself say that you don't want to introduce Lauren, your fiance, to your family and maybe realize what that means? And eventually he did break up with her, which that was so rough to watch. Like, I really thought that Dave was going to put Lauren in a situation where she had to break up with herself, essentially, like he had done in the past. We saw this in the pods with the love triangle between Dave and Molly and Lauren. Molly and Lauren pretty much had to corner him into making a decision. He really didn't do it on his own. Molly had to kind of do it for him. She broke up with herself for him. And then Lauren had to like convince him to be with her. Ugh, of course, we saw this coming. But Dave did pull the plug on the relationship. Thankfully, I think he realized like, oh, he's never going to introduce Lauren to his family. And it makes me wonder who he would ever introduce to his family with his sister, who seems so controlling and such a huge influence in his life. This whole sister thing is weird, man. I got into it in previous recaps, but it's so strange. So yeah, if someone is hiding you from their friends and family, and there's no reason to be hiding you. I mean, there is a reason, and that is that they don't want to be with you. Lesson number 5 is when you marry someone, it needs to be a 100% yes. So this is about Monica and Joey. So Monica said no to Joey at the altar because she said it wasn't 100% yes for her. And then Joey kind of has a cop out and says he was going to say no as well. Okay. I'm glad that they were honest with themselves instead of giving into the pressure of the entire situation. Like, I can imagine Love is Blind just puts so much pressure on these poor contestants. Like, all your friends and family are there watching you, and then you have to essentially break up with someone in front of everyone you know, plus an entire audience on Netflix. Oof, that's a lot. So, but yeah, I think Monica and Joey had it right. It wasn't 100% yes for either of them. So they didn't say yes at the altar. And I think that when you do marry someone, it's got to be a 100% yes. And look, I'm married. I've been married for 6 months. I got engaged last year. I think having doubts throughout your engagement or getting to know someone is normal. But on the day when you're at the altar or wherever you're getting married, it's got to be 100% yes. And if you're not feeling 100% yes on the day, it's probably a no. Also, like some people on this show, and I've seen this on other seasons, will be like, I'm not going to know until the day. Like, I'm not going to know which way I'm going to go. That is crazy. That is not how real life should work for marriage. Like, what you're going to say on the day after, like, you've planned this entire wedding, absolutely not. That is not how it goes. So, just know that by the time you are walking down the aisle, it's got to be a 100% yes. That is what you deserve. Okay. And if it's not, you say no. All right. The 6th lesson is if your partner refuses to talk about something because you've already discussed it, that's a red flag. So this is about Virginia and Devin. And we saw Virginia, like there was an episode where they're laying on a bed. It's like the day before their wedding or a week before their wedding. And Virginia is trying to get into these deeper conversations with Devin, prior to their wedding day. And Devin kind of shut her down. He's like, we already discussed everything. We already talked about politics. We already talked about religion. We already talked about abortion, whatever it was. And I felt like that was just so dismissive. He's so closed off. He clearly didn't want to talk about it. And I think that is a red flag. I mean, look, the person you're dating sometimes won't be in the mood to discuss a heavy topic like at any time. And that's fine. Like there's a time and a place. But in relationships, just know that it's normal to talk about things over and over. And it helps you gain a deeper understanding. You might discover things in more conversations about the same topic that you didn't discover in the past. And it's normal. It's okay to revisit things. Don't expect to talk about something one time. And I'm going to be totally honest, my husband does this with me sometimes with with some of the things we fight about. And the thing is that in relationships, there are always going to be unsolvable issues. We've heard the Gottmans talk about this. Esther Perel talks about this. There are going to be certain fundamental issues in a relationship you'll never solve. So it becomes more about how you talk about them and less about finding a solution and more about how you navigate the topic because it will come up again. And I have to remind my husband when it comes up and he's like, we already talked about this. It's like, yeah, and we're talking about it again because we didn't find a solution the last time. Nothing changed. And I'm still feeling this way, or this is still happening. So I think that it's okay and normal to bring things up several times. I think that it could be tough in like that 6-week period that Love is Blind is happening. Maybe it feels like a lot, like it's brought up just over and over and over. Like we kind of saw this with Ben and Sarah where their issue was brought up so much to the point where Ben was like, I'm just fried and I can't talk about this anymore. And even though I don't like Ben, I totally understand that feeling of like, we've beat this to death for the last week. Like we've talked about this every single day, so I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's fine. But I do think that if someone just won't revisit a topic with you, it's just a red flag. And I think it's worth calling them out and being like, and also, or just saying that you feel dismissed, that you feel like they're closed off, and see if you can get them to open up and talk to you about it. All right, lesson number 7. When you get rejected, it is rarely about you, it's about their preferences. This season taught us a lot about rejection. There was a lot of rejection because there were so few marriages. And this is about Virginia and Devin. Virginia said no to Devin at the altar. Devin's family's reaction, like they seemed shocked and upset. His mom was like, he doesn't deserve this. I don't get these women. Like, I don't understand. The thing is, Virginia saw a lack of compatibility. And that doesn't mean that Devin is a bad person or not dateable or not marriage material. I'm sure he is. I'm sure there's someone out there for him. It also doesn't mean that Virginia is a bad person for rejecting him because of their incompatibilities. We need to stop taking a lack of compatibility so personally. And yes, you can 100% fall in love with someone who's incompatible, which is why on my podcast and on my channel, I advise folks to focus more on alignment than chemistry, because alignment is what's going to carry you more like further in a relationship than connection alone. If you just have connection but then you don't agree on anything, you don't see eye to eye on things, you're going to have a really hard time having a happy relationship and maintaining the connection that brought you together in the first place. So I think it's, if someone ends things with you because you're incompatible or you don't align on certain things, it's really more about what they want and less about you. Nothing's wrong with you necessarily. You can go find someone who aligns with you better, and they're going to go find someone else who aligns with them better. And no one's really like bad for that. It's not a good or bad thing. It's neutral. It's just part of dating and it's part of relationships. You're not going to know if someone's compatible with you on the first date. It's annoying that Virginia took it as far as she did because she knew certain things about Devin before she got to the altar, like long before, and then she still went all the way there. Hey, it's TV. I mean, it is what it is. But I hope this helps. I mean, compatibility is so important, and I just don't want you to take it personally if someone says that you're not compatible. It's not about you, it's about them. All right, lesson number 8 is part of having a healthy relationship includes trying new things. So this is about Sarah and Ben. So even though this didn't work out, I did notice this one aspect of their relationship that I thought was good. And that is when Sarah gave Ben's church a shot. We learned that Ben's religion was really important to him and he wanted his partner involved. So Sarah attended a service with him. She did her own research on his church and was generally open to the idea of getting involved. Ultimately, Sarah decided that it wasn't for her. And again, things didn't work out between them, but Sarah did an amazing job of communicating. And also, she looked for an alternative solution. Like she suggested, can they join a different church? Can she just not join him at services because she doesn't want to? Like, I think we can take this, like what she did, and kind of apply it to our relationships. Like, here's a difference they had. Ben was religious, she wasn't. So she was trying to close the gap by being open and actually giving it a fair shot and doing her research. She learned it wasn't for her, and then she came with different ideas. I think even though, again, Ben is problematic for so many reasons, Sarah can be problematic too, but I do like that example of like trying to navigate differences in a relationship. Number 9, knowing someone really well doesn't mean they're the best match. So at the reunion, Lauren mentioned that by the end of her time in the pods, she had never known anyone as well as she knew Dave. Unfortunately, Lauren and daters, just knowing someone and having a strong connection or feeling drawn to them is not enough for a healthy relationship to develop. We need to pay closer attention to how we're being treated. Don't settle for a good connection and nothing else. And the 10th lesson is it's important to have those big conversations before marriage. Like, man, I mean, there are many, many big conversations to have before marriage. I think that Love is Blind, the contestants do an okay job of trying to touch on as many as possible. But again, it's hard to do all that in 6 weeks when you go from being strangers to walking down the aisle. It's a lot to shove in a small amount of time. I do want to share my top 10 topics to get into before marriage in the description. This post on Instagram is my most viral post. It has over 100,000 likes and it was seen by like millions of people. So it's a really good post. Go check it out if you're curious about what to talk about before marriage, what to actually touch on before you are walking down the aisle. Go check it out. All right, so those are my 10 lessons from this season. Again, the season was a tough watch. Thank you for watching my recaps. I hope this helped. I'm excited for the next season in Denver. I'll try to do more recaps then, and I will see you next time.